Hello and welcome to Geeky Guys. If you're into geeky things, we're the guys for you. Just a quick note before we get into the video for today. If you go onto the Patreon site in the next couple of days, next couple of weeks, there's a couple of exclusive videos that I'm putting up there for patrons. So if you would like to become a patron, now's the best time to do so. You're going to get more exclusive videos per week and per month and whatnot. So go and check that out. As always, all links are in the description. Welcome to this video for today. Whether you're here for the first time or you're returning yet again. In this video today, we're digging into another of our deck upgrade guides for the Commander 2021 decks. This is the Witherbloom Witchcraft deck upgrade guide, suggestions for this deck. So I want to get into it pretty quickly here today and start talking about what's going on with this deck and what I would suggest to do with it to upgrade it. Now, I'm going to talk about Willow Dusk for literally like 5 seconds here because I don't want to talk about Willow Dusk. Willow Dusk, I don't think this commander in this deck is very good. As I sort of said when I was doing the original Commander 21 deck, face commanders and whatnot, discussion, review, whatnot. I sort of said, well, I don't think this one's all too good, and I'm not too enamored with it. I don't think it's that strong, that powerful. I just sort of felt like it was underwhelming. And I know I've literally talked about it for more than 5 seconds now, but the thing is, this commander, I think we can do a lot better, and in fact, we can very easily do a lot better, even in this own deck. We can find a better commander, even in this deck, that we can use. So we're looking at Dina, Soul Steeper. This is the commander that we're actually going to go with for this deck, and this is the first time that I've, with these commander decks, that I've gone, you know what, we're actually not going to use the face commander, we're going to use a different commander, because I think this commander, what it does is so much more powerful than what the face commander does, and I think it really does more of what this sort of archetype is wanting to do. Now, in building this deck, we are building a quote-unquote more combo, more, competitive style of deck than what typically I would try to build. So we're going down a completely different route than what we would probably normally do here. But I sort of went down a different route in the Voltron deck as well, because I wouldn't usually play Voltron. And I sort of went down a different route to a degree as well with the Boros deck, or the Lorehold deck, whatever, because, again, it sort of had a very specific strategy, and I wouldn't realistically play that sort of strategy very much either. But that was the strategy that I thought would be the best for its deck. And this strategy, I think, is best for this deck. So Dina, or Dinner, whatever, 2 mana, both of the Witherbloom colours, so Golgari, whatever, green and a black, 1/3. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. You can pay 1 to sacrifice another creature, and Dana gets plus X plus O until end of turn, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. Now, you could read that piece of text and think, oh, that sounds like it's semi-Voltron. To a degree, you could go semi-Voltron with this, but I'm not going to. I'm going to focus on that first line of text, which is whenever we gain life, each opponent loses life. So that's the direction that we're going in, and again, as I said, we're going in more of a competitive direction. Now, it's not going to be high top tiers. Don't take this to a CDH table and expect to win, too much, because it is a, longer, more drawn out strategy, and it's not just like, here's my 2-card combo, I win, although you could find some of those, but for the way I'm building it, it is certainly a higher powered deck than what a normal, upgraded precon would be. You're not into the point where you are in CDH, so you're in that competitively casual area where there are a lot of really strong decks, and I think you can play really well with this deck and have some great games with it. So first off, what we're going to do is have a look at the cards that are in this deck that we want to cut out, because there are a lot of cards that we do want to cut out, and we really want to focus in on gaining life and draining life from our opponents. We don't really care too much about getting into combat in this deck. We're doing something completely different by just either sacrificing things or just gaining life inherently through other things. So, first off, some of the cards that we want to cut here for this deck: Ageless Eternity. Whenever we gain life, we put that many +1/+1 counters on Ageless Eternity, and it's a 4/4 for 5. Yeah, sure. 1/1 counters are great to a degree if we were going to do something with it in combat, but it's not particularly evasive, so it's going to be hard to give it any kind of evasion, or we could give it some evasion, but it's just, I don't know whether it's worth it. I just don't think it's that worth it. I think it's a beater, and we don't need beaters in this deck. Defiant Bloodlord. It does do what we want in, that whole life gain, but it does it only to one opponent, and it's 7 mana. So, it's just too slow, and it's too targeted. We need things that, will affect all of our opponents. Loxodon Warhammer. This would be good if we were actually going direct down the Voltron avenue of this deck, but we're not going down that avenue. Again, we're not really looking to get into combat that much with this sort of deck. We're looking more to get into just draining life, sacrificing creatures, having creatures enter the battlefield, whatnot, things like that. Next up, a few other cards that are here are Obnixilus Reignited. It's basically, the main point of this, I think, is the tick up card draw, and 5 mana to tick up and, draw 1 card, lose 1 life. Yeah, we don't really care about the losing life because we're going to be gaining a lot of life, so that doesn't really matter. -3 to destroy a creature. Yeah, 5 mana sorcery to destroy a creature. Not really that good. Again, this is here because sometimes it can sit around and, it will go unchecked and you'll get, more value out of it than just that one activation. But really, if we're playing in this more highly tuned area, we certainly want this out. Reckless Spite. It's not actually that bad of a card, but the problem is it does only say non-black creatures. That little bit of text, I think we can cut it, because there's just better cards that we can put into this deck. And there are certainly some that are on a budget, and certainly some from the Strixhaven set itself that will get around this whole thing. We don't really need to kill 2 things for 3. That's fine. We don't really care. Again, 5 life doesn't really matter. That's irrelevant. Parasite Plume. This choose a color. When you cast a spell of the chosen color, we gain the life. Yeah, sure. And it also taps out a mana of the chosen color. But, we're not monocolored, but we're certainly heavier black for a lot of our synergy pieces and whatnot. And the green's just here for the ramp for the most part. And again, since we're in green, we've just got better ramp options. And you know, we've actually just got better options to help us drain life than this card. There's just cards that sort of help us out a lot more than what this card will do. Next up, couple more cards. On a war troll, or on a troll, rather. I was thinking about another card here. Maybe, I don't know. You know, Vigilance 2/3 for 3. Whenever we gain life, we gain that much life plus 1 instead. That's not too bad, but we want more instance of gaining life. We don't want just to gain extra life. We don't care about gaining extra life. We care about more instances of gaining life. Then on a troll gets +2/+1 as long as you have 25 or more life. That's always going to be the case with us in Commander. So, you know, it is a 4/4 for 3, which is kind of okay. You know, that's not bad stats, and it, you know, does have vigilance, so it can poke in there sometimes. And it stays on defensive. I just don't think we need it. I think we can do better than this, and we want more instance of life gain again. We don't want to just get more life. We want to trigger more, have more triggers essentially. Pristine Talisman taps to add 1 colorless and we gain a life. Look, 3 mana rocks for the most part have got to do a lot to find their place into a deck like this. And again, we're in green. We can find better things to ramp us, and we can find better things to have us gain life, make our opponents lose life, whatnot, those sorts of things. It's just not worth it for us, really. Blossoming Bog Beast, 5 mana, 3/3. Whenever it attacks, we gain 2 life, then creatures we control gain trample and get +X/+X in the end of turn, where X is the amount of life we gain this turn. Again, this is a beta. We don't really care about beating in with our creatures in this deck. We're just trying to gain as much life as we can, drain as much life as we can, as quickly as possible, so that we can win the game off of those specific effects. A couple more cards here. Essence Purge or Pulse. Sorcery, you gain 2 life. Each creature gets -X till end of turn, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. Sure, it's a mini board wipe, and it sort of gains us some life, but again, we want more things, and I think we don't really care this much about, you know, gaining so much life to wrap the board. We would rather just play a card like Toxic Deluge, you know, where we're paying an amount of life to give creatures -X until end of turn, where X is the life we pay. Because again, we're going to have a lot of life as a resource, so we want to use it as a resource. We're not trying to gain 1,000,000 life in this deck. We're not trying to be at 1,000,000 life in this deck. What we're trying to do is drain our opponents out of the game and win the game through draining people out. We only have the life gain to trigger some of the drain effects that we actually have. We don't really care about our life total as long as it's not at 0, or as long as we're not dead. We don't care what our life total is. If we're gaining some life here and there and that's making some triggers, we want to also be using that life as a resource so that we can do other things with it. Marshland Bloodcaster, you know, taps to, you know, basically make our spells be able to be cast by paying life rather than paying that mana, the mana of that card. You know, 5 mana to cast this thing, then 2 mana the turn after, or whatnot, after you untap, to, you know, basically cast something for your life, for life. Yeah, that's an okay effect. As I said, we want to use our life total as a resource, but I just don't think we're ever going to get there with this. I just don't think it offers enough. If we want to pay life for casting spells, put Bolus and Citadel in here, because that's just strictly way better than this. Pest Infestation, XX in green, sorcery, destroy up to X artifacts and or enchantments. Create twice X 1/1 black and green pest creature tokens with When this creature dies, you gain a life. Those are fine things to do to a degree. If there's not a lot of artifacts and enchantments on the battlefield, we make a whole bunch of pests so that we can, gain some life off of killing them or whatever. But I think just if we want destroy artifact and enchantment spells, we've got destroy artifact and enchantment spells. If we want to create pest creatures, then we want to be able to immediately kill them off by something else because we want that life immediately. We don't want to go through too many hoops to actually get the actual payoff to what we actually, want from this. We don't want to be thinking, okay, well, now I need Viserys here to kill all these creatures, or I need something else to kill all these creatures off, or whatnot. So how do I get to that point, or whatnot? Sprout back Trudge, a 9/7 with trample for 9. And it costs X less to cast, where X is the amount of life we gain this turn. That's good. At the beginning of our end step, if we gain life this turn, we may cast it from our graveyard. These are all fine things. If we're in a deck that actually cared about our graveyard, and we wanted to cast things, and we wanted these big beaters again, yeah, sure, this would be right in there. We don't care about this. This just doesn't do enough for us. We don't really care about it. Tavish, Gloom Summoner, at the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, you may pay X life, whereas X is the amount of life you gain. If you do create an XX black demon creature with flying, sure, it gives us something to do with our life that we gain, and it gives us a token that we can use for fodder, but it's way too slow, and it's only one token. We want lots of little tokens. We don't really care about big tokens. We just want a whole bunch of little stuff that we can, just sack off. Trudge Garden, basically in the same problem. It creates 4/4s. We don't really care about 4/4s. We don't want to pay 2 for some 4/4s. We're just not in that sort of deck. We want to gain a whole bunch of just little things that we can easily kill off, or that will immediately die off. We don't really care about this sort of an effect in this specific strategy of this specific deck. Alright, Vampire Nighthawk, just too slow. Look, it has to get into for combat for it to do anything. It's just not going to do enough in this deck. Sun Droplet, whenever you dealt damage, you put that many charge counters on the droplet. At the beginning of each upkeep, you may remove a charge counter from the droplet, and if you do, you gain a life. Yeah, sure, it can gain you some life and it can protect you, whatnot. But again, I just think it's a little bit too slow. You've got to actually survive these things. And realistically, we don't want to take damage in this deck. We don't really care about that. We just want to, have our setup ready, have enough mana to do what we want. Basically, kill everyone on one turn. We don't want anyone to be able to, or 1 or 2 turns, whatever. Once we're set up, we want to get our setup ready. We want to just be like, okay, cool, now everyone's dead. That's what we want to do. We don't want to be waiting around, just gaining some random life, and we don't have our actual payoffs. We want to have our actual payoffs, when we have this. And if we have our payoffs when we have this, we should have already won. That's the thing about this. Leyline Prowler, taps for mana. That's a good mana dork or whatever, because it has Death Touch, so most people don't want to attack into the Death Touch. It has Lifelink. That's okay, but it just doesn't do enough for our deck. Again, we can find better things. We don't really care about this. It just doesn't do enough for what we want to do with this in this specific archetype. As I always sort of go through in these decks, the lands, Temple of the False God, just a trap, get it out of here. Study Hall, just bad, get it out of here. Golgari Rut Farm, not too bad, but I just think there's so many other better lands that we can toss into this deck. So it can get out of here. Myriad Landscape, not terrible, but we're in green, so we don't really need this. for that much. We could keep it, it's just fine, but again, we could find some other better lands. Sunstep Forest, taps to gain us life, or pay 1 green and tap it to gain a life. That's, we have to control 2 or more green permanents for that to actually work. So, it's there, but, I just think we can find better things. We don't really care enough about it. Witherbloom campus, like with all the campuses, if you're on a budget, it's fine to keep it in, whatnot. But again, we can just find straight up just better lands that we do really, really want. So now that we've had a look at the cards that we might, or we're probably taking out of this deck at least, let's look at some of the cards that we're looking to put into this deck now. And again, I'm not really going to go through too much of, saying this is on a XYZ budget or whatnot, because again, I expect people to go, okay, I have $5. That's how much I can spend on upgrading this deck. When you go into the store or a store, and so if you buy it from Target or Walmart, it might be a bit different, but if you go into your LGS, your local game store, where you can actually play games, I know you can actually play games, even after, maybe after the pandemic, but that aside. But again, you can play games in those stores. You say, hey, look, I want to buy this Witherbloom deck, but I want to spend $5 in upgrading it, and I want as many of these cards that I can get for $5. What can I get? That's what I expect people to do, or whatever. If you have $50, if you have $100, if you have $500, if you have $1,000, whatever it is, I don't know what your budget is. You've got to decide and go, okay, I want to spend $5. I want to spend whatever, $15, $20 on this deck. I want to spend $50 on this deck, whatever it is. Decide what you want to spend on your hobby. If you really want to put, $1,000 into this deck, you can. That is up to you. So first, Essence Warden. When a creature ETB is under our control, we gain a life. Oh, it's actually in battlefield, so it's any opponent, so that's cool as well. Marauding Battle Priest or Blight Priest. Whenever we gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. Really good as well. Veto Thorn of the Dusk Rose. Whenever we gain life, target opponent loses that much life. And we give our creatures lifelink until end of turn. That's probably not ever going to really come up. But it just does ping down very quickly, and it is very effective. There's even a really strong deck just built around him, so that's there. Exquisite Blood. It's half of basically a combo piece here in this deck, and the other part we will get to later on. But whenever an opponent loses life, we gain that much life. So if we gain that much life, then we can make opponents lose life. If we can, make them lose life, we gain life. So we're gaining life to make them lose life, to make them lose life, to make us gain life. So basically, we're in that infinite loop. We're making them lose life, so we gain life. Since we gain life, we make them lose life. Since we made them lose life, we gain life. So it just keeps repeating and repeating. That way. Salva, Queen of the Golgari. The main thing that we care about with this is whenever you sacrifice a creature, you may gain 2 life. That's the main thing that we care about with this. Viseria, sacrifice a creature to scry 1. We want these cheap free sacrifice outlets so that we can kill off our small creatures or whatnot that we do get, so that we can drain our opponents out very quickly. There's a lot of different effects that are very similar to this that we can put in here, like Carrion Feeder. That's another great card for that sort of slot as well. There's a couple of other ones, but yeah, that Carrion Feeder is a really good one as well. Death Greeter. Whenever another creature is put into a graveyard for play, you may gain 1 life. Life Gift, whenever a land comes into play, gain 1 life. Courser of Crucifix, main thing is, you know, when a land ETBs, we gain a life. There's a couple of other effects that are very similar to these as well that basically do the same thing, much like these. Actually, we'll be talking about another one in just a moment. Zulaport Cutthroat, you know, whenever a creature we control dies, each opponent loses a life, we gain a life, and from us gaining that life, they're going to lose more life because that's the synergy of our commander, like I was talking about. Bastion of Remembrance, same basic thing. It does give us a token for fodder as well. When a creature we control dies, each opponent loses life, we gain a life. Kanzandu Necropot. When a land ETBs, we gain 1 life as well. So more of those sorts of effects that just gain us life basically for free. And again, as I said, we're sort of in the sacrifice plan, and we do have a lot of effects that sort of gain us life from these sorts of things. Gary is just amazing, just one of the best cards we can put in this deck. When it ETBs, we're going to gain a whole bunch of life, at least some amount of life, even just a few life here or there, even if we gain 5 life. Look, if we gain 5 life and our opponents are going to lose 5 life, let's say that instead, then we're going to gain 10 life. So we've gained 10 life. So now our opponents are going to further lose another 10. So we've already just dealt 15 damage to our opponents realistically. So that's really, really good. That's not very unrealistic thing. Cryptghast doubles our mana pretty much as well as has this ability to extort, which means we can pay a mana whenever we cast a creature to make each of our opponents lose 1 life, and we gain that much life. So we can gain 3 life, and then we can also make our opponents lose more life. Vindictive Vampire, when a creature we control dies, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, and we gain 1 life. The main thing is we're gaining life off of that, so that we can, you know, ping our opponents for more damage with more of our life gain effects and whatnot. Sir Conrad, really good as well whenever a creature dies or is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature leaves the graveyard, he deals 1 damage to each opponent. It's not gaining us life, but it's just a lot of damage that will add up and will eventually kill everyone. And it can mill us some cards, so it can keep adding cards to the graveyard from our deck to damage more of our opponents more quickly. Grim Harris specs, whenever a creature or a non-token creature we control dies, we draw a card. Midnight Reaper, basically the same thing. It deals 1 damage to us and we draw a card. Again, we don't really care if we get pinged for some damage here and there. We're gaining lots of life and we have lots of life to spare. Aether Fluxer Reservoir, this is kind of a meme card as well. You know, whenever we cast a spell, we gain 1 life for each spell we cast this turn. We can pay 50 life, and it deals 50 damage to target creature or player. You know, we can take someone out of the game very easily with that. Bontu's Monument, black spells cost 1 less to cast. That's kind of nice. Whenever we cast a creature, and it doesn't matter whether it's green, blue, black, white, purple, whatever, each opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. Very good. Sanctum of Stone Fangs, at the beginning of our pre-combat main foes, each opponent loses X life and we gain X life where X is the number of shrines we control. So we're going to only probably have 1 shrine in this deck, but still that 1 life and then that 1 life that we gain, you know, that can turn into much, much more life that we're sort of draining from our opponents with all of the synergies that we've got going on. This just isn't all of them. These are just the sort of top ones that I'm suggesting for the most part. You know, and then there's some other cards that sort of do the same thing as what I was saying earlier. A Retreat to Hagra and Retreat to Kazandu. Retreat to Hagra, the main thing here is when we play a land, each opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. So, you know, another effect that gains us life when we play lands, but it also makes our opponents lose life. Kazandu, main thing, we gain 2 life when we play a land. Another effect that gains us more life just for free, essentially. You know, and it will also make our opponents lose life since we're gaining life. High market, we can tap it to sacrifice a creature to gain a life. Just this being on a land and basically for free and an easy include, definitely will run this. Obviously, some lands that we want to think about putting into this deck, since we're going to take out some of those bad lands, some of the basics, because there's always too many basics in these decks. Overgrown Tomb, Undergrowth Stadium, Woodland Cemetery, all of these are great. You know, there are some more dual lands in our colours as well. But, you know, find what you can find and just toss in, you know, some of the best ones. These are the top 3, I would say, to toss in. Just since you're in 2 colours, I wouldn't think too much about too many others. Like, they've already put in the cycle of barren lands, not barren lands, whatever they are, tainted lands that are in these decks that have black. So those are really good lands as well. There's other lands like the pain lands and whatnot that we can put in here. A couple others, but again, Golgari colours are kind of a bit thin. But you know, there are some, but these are the main ones that we want to put in. And that actually, surprise, we're pretty much at the end of discussing this deck and what's going on with this deck. It seemed like a lot shorter to me than what it actually has been, I think. But, you know, we really didn't have that much to talk about within, like, trying to figure out a different synergy and a different strategy, more so than the last deck, and more so than even the Boros deck and whatnot. In this deck, it's very clear what the deck wants to do. It's very easy to do what this deck wants to do, and there's some really good cards to be doing that sort of thing. So it's easy to go, okay, this is pretty simple. All I need to do is gain some life and make my opponents lose life by having a lot of triggers that say, I gain life, therefore you lose life, or you gain life, oh, therefore you lose life, therefore I gain life, or I gain life, therefore you lose life, things like that. The whole effect. Now, there is that whole combo that I was talking about. Sanguine Bond is in this deck in the precon. So it's very easy to combo off in this deck. All you need is to have Sanguine Bond, Exquisite Blood on the battlefield, and everyone that I've met in the community knows what is, and I sort of explained it a little bit earlier, but basically whenever we gain life, with one enchantment, we basically gain the life. Then the other one says, oh, you gained life, therefore each opponent will lose that much life. And the other one says, oh, the opponent's lost that life, therefore you'll gain life. And therefore, oh, you've gained life, therefore opponents will lose life. So it just keeps going in that loop where eventually everyone is dead. So that is the main combo that is in this deck. It is basically in the deck for free, just a free roll, as long as you can put Exquisite Blood into this deck. And Exquisite Blood is a bit expensive, a lot more expensive than Sanguine Bond, but it is the main combo that you can put into these life gain, life loss style of decks. But, I just wanted to quickly explain that one last little synergy that is there. So guys, hope you have enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about this deck tech, this deck upgrade, this deck suggestions. Write down there in the comments below, do you want to see me do more of these deck upgrades, these suggestions for these decks? I always try to do them for all the decks that come out when they come out. But that's about it for today. So that you guys can, get an idea of what these decks want to do. Anyway, let me know right down there in the comments below. Please remember that the success of channels like this is based on viewers like you, so please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing if you would like to support this content. You can also get social with us on our Discord and on our Facebook. If you would like to further support the channel, you can go onto our Patreon. All links are in the description. Thank you for your support. It really means a lot. I hope you have enjoyed this video here today. And if you have, I hope you will come back for another one. See you then.